Hello, welcome to another of the Richardson lectures looking at river landscapes in the UK. In this session we're going to be talking about river landforms that have been created by deposition. So we need to be able to identify and describe these features and to be able to explain how they form. So first of all, a quick recap on deposition. Deposition is when the river is dropping the material it's been carrying. The material it's been transporting is getting dropped, and that takes place because of a number of reasons. Firstly, if the amount of water in the channel falls due to a period of little or no rainfall, the volume of water in the channel is going to fall, therefore its ability to transport is reduced, and so deposition takes place. Also, when there's too much sediment in the river, there's a large input of sediment, perhaps a riverbank collapses, there's going to be a lot of deposition because the river is not going to be able to transport that volume of material. When a river meets standing water, particularly important for this session, when a river meets the sea or a lake where the flow is not travelling in a particular direction, the velocity drops and the material drops instantly. And also, linking back to the last video, we also see deposition on the inside of meander bends because we've got a shallow flow there, therefore less velocity, and it's going to deposit. So where do depositional landforms form? Well, it's in the middle and lower course of the river. Mainly in the lower course is where we see the biggest of these depositional features though. So our first feature is a floodplain. So what's a floodplain? Well, it's a wide flat area of land either side of the river. We find these in the middle and lower courses. And floodplains themselves are made up of layers of alluvium. That's fine river sediment that builds up in layers every time you have a flood. That's particularly useful because alluvium helps to make the soils rather fertile, makes it good for farming, and so often in areas where we've got big floodplains we see productive farmland. So we'll now take a little look at how these features form. So now we'll take a look at how floodplains form. Here we can see a cross-section of a river channel in the bottom of its valley. And because we're now in the middle and lower courses of the river is actually eroding increasingly laterally across the valley floor. And what that does is, as the channel moves, it actually erodes the sides of the valley, leaving behind this flat area of land that we call the floodplain. And that channel will keep doing so, weaving back and forth along this valley floor as the meanders migrate over time. So that's what creates the flat floodplain. Now, in order to build up the layers of alluvium, each time the river floods, the material it's transporting is going to be spread out across the floodplain in layers. And so over time, these layers of alluvium build up, and that's what helps to create the fertile land that we see either sides of floodplains. We're now going to look at levees which form on the floodplain by the sides of the river channel. So levees are ridges of sediment that form along the banks of the river, and it's where the largest sediment, the coarsest sediment, is deposited during a flood, and so it builds up these embankments along the side of the river, and actually they end up forming a natural flood defence because they effectively make the channel deeper so that more water can be held in the channel before another flood. So as I said, they form during flooding. When the river bursts its banks, it's the coarsest, heaviest sediment that's going to be deposited first, and so that's going to build up in piles closest to the edge of the river channel, and it builds up these mounds, these ridges all along the side of the channel, and that then leads to the channel being a greater volume and it can hold more water. And our last feature are estuaries. So an estuary is an area at the river's mouth where the river meets the sea. And the river is often very wide here as it meets the sea, and it's affected by both river and coastal processes. And we also have a very important habitat here, salt marshes. They form because of that mixture of fresh and salt water, and it's a very important habitat for many species. How do they form? Well, it's mainly all about deposition here. It's a very calm environment where the river meets that standing water. The river can't discharge its sediment into the sea, and so instead begins to deposit it. And at low tide, that exposes scenes like this, these mud flats. There is exposed banks of sediment when the tide's out, and eventually when vegetation takes hold, these will become the salt marshes, that really important habitat. So we'll now finish off by taking a look at a couple of exam questions. So here's the first one. It's a nice block diagram getting us to recognise features in diagram form. So it says study figure 13, a diagram showing features of a lowland river valley, and it says complete the diagram using the following terms. So we've got to label up these features. 3 marks available for this. So we can see we've got these big bends in the river here, so there are meanders of course. Here we've got an old meander loop that's been cut off. We know that's an oxbow lake. This arrow here is pointing to this flat area adjacent to the river, so that's going to be our floodplain. And the last one is going to be our estuary. We can just see the river starting to widen here, so we can take that to be that key characteristic of an estuary. Another question then, this time a 1 marker. We've been given another figure, figure 13 here, a photograph of the river Cuckmere and its valley. We can see the sea down in the foreground here, so we're at the coast. And it says, using figure 13, describe one feature of the river Cuckmere where it reaches the sea at point Y. So here's point Y down here. Now, to me the most obvious thing to talk about here, particularly in relation to what we've been talking about today as a process, is we've got deposition. We can see this mound of sediment here right at the mouth of the river, so we can say that deposition has taken place here. However, mark scheme also, awarded marks are saying we can see that the river cuts through this kind of beach material, and also the river itself becomes narrower and straighter just before it enters the sea. Another thing you could have picked up on there to gain a mark. But to me, the main point there is that this is an area of deposition. And then a linked question, we've got feature Z labelled on figure 13 as a floodplain, so that helps us out by showing us an example of a floodplain. And then for 4 marks, the question is explain the formation of a floodplain. Well, we need to have a very clear sequence of explaining how that feature is formed. We also need to make sure we're referencing processes that are taking place here. So there's actually a lot of marks you could pick up for this question. It's only 4 marks, but there's lots of ways you can get those marks. So here's some things you could refer to. Referring to the fact this is a middle or lower course feature. I know this is an explain question, but a very brief description of what a floodplain actually is, just to set the scene. We can be referring to lateral erosion and meander migration. That's what initially creates the wide, flat area of land either side of the river. We can talk about suspension, the fact that by the middle and lower course we've got lots of sediment travelling in suspension. It's smaller and rounder now, and so we have less bed load and more suspended load that can be deposited. We can then say that during the flood, water leaves the channel. As soon as it does that, the velocity is reduced rapidly, and so deposition takes place, building up those layers of alluvium on the floodplain. You could also mention that levees are formed here as well. That coarsest material in the floodwater going to be dropped first, closest to the channel, building up those ridges along the sides of the channel. So that's it for this video. Next time we're going to be taking a closer look at rivers on Ordnance Survey maps.